Hey everyone, welcome back to the Denoise podcast. Joey is out, so today we'll be sharing another fun short film that I made, and here it is. What do you bring to the table that we already don't have here? Awesome. So let me show you the source behind it and how I set up the multi-camera. So this is a 3/4 view of me in this very table that I'm shooting this video from. A reverse into the creature, back to me for some paper shuffling. Notice the handoff of the paper there. Asking a question. And then a reverse over the shoulder shot with both of us on the same frame. Side by side, a seamless transition, and then the final shot. So now that you've seen where the source material originated, a couple of tricks and tips for those of you who are trying to make a hybrid live action, including an animated creature into a live action short. The first tip is ground yourself in reality. And what I mean by that is use a real set, use something tangible and tactile that then you can ground the cameras to. In this case, this round table was my device for that. This image here, where we have both of us on the same shot, I actually shot it with myself and without myself. And this table is going to ensure that the cameras have the same scale as it goes through generation, and there's something physical and tactile, and the reflections from the table itself is going to help dictate the lighting in those generations, which we're going to get into. So I'm going to walk you through the multi-camera consistency setup that I used, and then the asset generation part, specifically generating the background environment, as well as the different camera angles with the lizard in them. And then finally, we're going to go through the generations themselves. I'll show you a couple of failed generations just for fun. And we're going to correct all of this in DaVinci Resolve. Now, I'm doing a lot more than color correction. I'm actually correcting for lighting mistakes and trying to have seamless, consistent look and feel throughout the whole sequence. So we're going to get into that as well. Before I ended up on the lizard creature, I actually tested a few other creatures. You can see an alien here. It just wasn't the right vibe, and I think it would have been a little too distracting. So I went with something more like this. And so I started out with an empty chair, as you can see here. And then after a few generations, I was able to get the lizard in there. It's a Nano Banana generation. And once I was happy with the size and placement, the arm registration on the table, I then started to work on the environment. Now, for the environment, I went through a few different iterations. I first tried a futuristic boardroom here. As you could see, it was just a little too much. I wanted to emulate a sitcom setup with multiple cameras and not really go for a cinematic film look. So I didn't intentionally add any grain or any vignetting or any halation and all of those things. I wanted to have a very standard sort of broadcast look and feel. I tried a more corporate boardroom here, more traditional one, as you would say. And this is an example of a problem that I find with a lot of image generation editing. Even with Nano Banana Pro, it tends to not recognize spatially where you should be, and it just arbitrarily places you into different environments. After a lot of tries, I finally ended up with this really moody boardroom type thing, a lot of wood paneling, which I love, and a very cozy atmosphere. There was just a couple of mistakes around the light, so I corrected some of that, and then this was the final one that I ended up with. Yeah, I was happy with this. Now the challenge was to take this very environment, build the rest of it out just from this one shot. I then had to recreate the opposite view. So after a few shots, now I had the opposite view where the monster would be sitting for that 3/4 shot. Once I had that, then I started to place the table in there, and the table just sort of landed arbitrarily quite a few times after I got this. Scale-wise, this felt correct. So this is a 4-foot table that feels like a 15 or so feet wide room. So once I was happy with that, I then took this into Photoshop to do the cropping. So let me show you the trick to that. So in Photoshop, you could see that I overlaid the actual table from the actual camera into the generation once I placed the monster. And the reason I'm doing this is just to get the scale and the camera perspective correct. So how high the camera should be and how much it should be pointed down. These things are not guaranteed in image generation. So I had to do this manual step. So then I tried a couple of generations from that side. Here's one here. This is from Vio, just him breathing heavily, just to test what it would feel like and if I could actually cut back and forth. So the next challenge was to actually do an actual piece of paper handoff. So I would pick up the paper that the lizard then hands me. And this will sort of allude to us being in the same space and kind of, again, ground ourselves in reality. And so for that, I actually did a first frame generation from Kling 01. I tried Kling 2.6, VO 3.1, just to kind of get it correct. What ended up working for me actually was WAN 2.2 Animate. It just happened to give me the most photoreal look without completely distorting my face and body. So again, my camera, I'm not too worried about. I know I could nail it. But can I nail the creature side from a fully synthetic generation? So let's take a look at that. So the first thing I had to do in order for me to generate that piece of paper handoff was actually place a synthetic piece of white paper, a resume of the lizard onto the table next to him. So after I placed that in there, the next thing was to then generate him handing off a piece of paper. You could see there just a random hand appears. After many generations, I just still couldn't get rid of it. And also the motion is just really slow. So I sped it up in post and I cropped it to get rid of that arbitrary random hand. Okay, so once I had those back and forth shots all figured out, the next one was over the shoulder shot. Now, this was a little bit challenging because it's both of us in the same frame. And so the expectation for photorealism is high. The creature can't look too synthetic while I'm in the frame, and I can't look too real if the creature is synthetic. So it's a play between the two styles, AI generation and the real plate. So let's take a look at how I achieved that. I had to have the right perspective. Actually, I had to match the exact camera perspective as the one from the real world. And so I just took a screenshot from here. That piece of paper is real, and I'm going to be using it as a prop, as you saw in the short. So once I had that, it was then quite a few iterations until I got to this, where the creature was in the frame, and you could see here the creature's just a little too big, so I had to play with scale, but he's seated correctly. He's in that same moody room that I am in. The table looks quite real. Again, grounding in reality, using the table for all of the shots to kind of come back to the origin point. One quick thing to note is before all of the video generations, once I was done with the image itself, I pushed it through a skin enhancer. So this not only helped my skin tone just have more detail, it actually helped the lizard's scales quite a bit. As you can see here, we go from sort of a blocky, scaly thing to now the scales themselves just having a little bit more texture. Now, am I happy with this? Not really. I wish there was a little bit more detail here, but I'll take it. I think this is a great starting point and a good test. So this goes right into the different video models that I talked about. I tested with Kling 01, Kling 2.6, VO 3.1, as well as WAN 2.5. So now that you saw the shot of the creature just sort of sitting on the table opposite to me, it's time to now place my shoulder and the left side of my body into the frame. So let's take a look at Resolve. And this was done using the AI Magic Mask in Resolve, which, as you can see, is literally one click. And once I had myself masked out correctly, I then placed myself into the frame as a layer in front of this creature layer. And then with some color grading to match the two plates, a little bit of blurring on me to defocus myself, I was able to achieve this shot. Awesome. And then finally, we got into the most challenging shot for me, which was the side-by-side shot. So again, we start with an image from the real world. And then once I removed the background from there, this is just me talking to an empty chair. I then had to place this creature or this lizard in there. So after a few tries, I got the lizard in there as well as the environment. So this is what I ended up with. And then I pushed this also through the skin enhancer to get more lizard detail on that scale. Again, I'm not 100% happy with this. The room feels a little bit smaller, a little bit more claustrophobic. However, after having done about 20 or so generations, I was happy with this enough to then proceed to the next step. So I was ready to generate the video. Lighting wise, there's quite a few mistakes here. This region is just too bright here. Again, this wall is just too close. There's too much light on the legs here as well. And then behind me is also too bright. So the lighting is just not working in general, and there is no consistency across the board. And this tends to be a general problem with image and video generation today. Is there's very little control over spatial perspective, so moving cameras around, as well as lighting as your camera changes. So if the lighting remains static as you change your camera, it actually doesn't really respect where the light previously was. So once I was happy with that, then it was pushed through some generations. I tried a few different models, and the one that I was super happy with was actually Kling 2.6. It's really hard to control performance through prompting. I wish I had done another pass and just sort of mocap myself on the other side as the lizard. I just didn't have time for that. So I went with a full synthetic approach. I tried, the lizard tapping on the table and just wanted to try a few things. Basically, I was trying to allude to the final moment of him eating the resume, and I just needed a transition shot, really. So this was the one I was happy with, where he leans in and I lean in with him. Again, the paper is not exactly in the right place, but it's good enough. If you look at my face and the background, everything is just really soft, but it's going to go by quick. And I actually reduced it to just 1 second because I was just not super proud of it. Okay, so now that I did that, the next step was to then incorporate that final shot of him eating the piece of paper. Again, this is the same formula as the last shot of over the shoulder. So this is the plate that I generated. Great ending to a short, I think. So now I just have to add my shoulder to it and transition to this shot. I want to try something just a little bit different, just to spice things up. I wanted to do like a bullet time transition from the side by side to the over the shoulder. So the camera was just moving at a 45-degree pace. And in order to do that, all you need is a start frame and an end frame. Give it to Kling 01 and it'll figure out a smooth transition. I've seen some examples of it on YouTube, so I just wanted to try it and throw it in there. So for the first frame, it was obviously the last frame of this shot was the beginning of the transition. And then the end was the first frame of the next shot, right? So you're just basically putting this thing in the middle of those two shots. And this is what we ended up with here. And this is a 5-second clip. It's really slow. It has a weird ramp up and ramp down. The motion is not smooth. So I ended up putting this into Resolve, as you can see here, speeding it up, adding a lot of motion blur to it, and then just making sure it just is as seamless as possible from the last shot to the next shot. Okay, so that is all of the generations. Now it's all put together in Resolve and edited together. And after that, now it's not just the color grading, but what I call lighting fixes. And the way I solve for the lighting mistakes is using magic windows. I'm not 100% expert on this stuff, so I just use the really basic shapes like rectangles and gradients. And I'm just turning lights down on regions of the frame. And then I'm isolating the lizard when necessary and isolating myself when necessary to just get the right contrast and the right color. The yellow on the lizard's sort of torso on the front of his chest, it was just a little bit too yellow for me. It just had that AI tinge that we're all just too familiar with. I wanted to move away from the AI look and feel as much as possible. So I shifted to a cooler temperature. I brought the yellow down using a color selector here. And now you could see that this is much closer. So here is the original frame without correction, and then here is the frame with correction. I did this across the board for all of the shots. Even on the over-the-shoulder shot here, quite a bit of adjustment was necessary. The one that needed the most adjustment was this side-by-side shot here. You could see here under the table where our legs are, that entire region needs to be dark because no light is really hitting there. Behind both of us, it needs to be dark. So I darkened all of those areas with magic windows. Finally, I used the depth map feature in Resolve to just kind of knock the background out of focus a little bit. Again, there's only so much you can do if you don't have good quality imagery to begin with. So you can only push it so much. And unfortunately, with video generations, the resolution is just so limited. Some of my generations were 1080p, some of them were 720p. And overall, there was just a level of softness that I just could not get rid of. Having said that, this is still a really incredible glimpse at what the future of visual effects could be with AI-powered tools. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's take a look at the clip one last time. What do you bring to the table that we already don't have here? Awesome. If you have any comments or questions about this workflow, or if you want to see more, just comment below and we'll see you on the next one.